Channel 11 presents Talk It Over. Here's your host, Ellen Adelstein.
Good evening. Welcome to our show this evening. I have a very distinguished guest, a woman of valor and of great courage, a woman who was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize by the Israeli government, Beate Klarsfeld, from France and Germany, I believe.
I'm German born, but I'm living today in France, in Paris.
You are, of course, known worldwide as being a Nazi hunter, seeking final justice for those who perpetrated the Holocaust massacre. How did you get involved in such a very different task?
Well, I think I have to point out that I'm German and non-Jewish, and I try simply to assume the responsibility of the Germans today, especially of the young German generations. And so I became involved in the fact that former active Nazis can entrust the political life in Germany. I protested against the nomination of the former Nazi Chancellor Kurt Lischka. I became involved I protested against the rehabilitation of Nazi criminals in Germany, who are the worst, if not the worst in history. And certainly, like a German non-Jewish, I try to stay on the side of the Jewish people, and in this field also by actions I try to show my solidarity. But the question of hunting down Nazi criminals is completely false, because most of them are living today in Germany. Either they were sentenced to light sentences, or even since a long time they're out of jail. And for the moment, my husband, who's a Jew and who's a lawyer today and who as a child suffered the Hitlerian persecutions, we are in charge of the problem of the German Nazi criminals who were active in France during the war, and from there deported 80,000 Jews. And these criminals had remained completely unpunished in West Germany until now, because in June of this year the German justice finally decided to indict the most important of them, Kurt Lischka, the man of the Gestapo, Herbert Hagen, the man who was responsible of the police of the SS and Nazi police in France, and Ernst Heinrichsen, who was in charge of the deportation of Jewish children.
You said that you are a non-Jew.
I'm non-Jewish.
And you were married to a Jew.
Yes.
How did you finally decide to act as a person, living, I assume, a married woman's life? You have children, I believe.
Yes, I have two children. I have a girl of 5 years, a boy of 13 years.
What made you decide to take steps to come out of your ordinary everyday life and take this task upon yourself?
I think the involvement started when after protesting against the nomination of Kurt Lischka in 1966 by articles, I was fired from my job as typist in the official Franco-German news office, and I persevered and I tried to mobilize the German news, and finally I slept in Berlin in 1968 in order to attract public opinion on the Hitler past of this man. And in '69 he was defeated, he lost the election, his party lost the election. So then I became involved in other cases.
Now I want to talk a little bit about that. This man that you're talking about, this is called The Slap Heard Round the World. What exactly did you do, and why did you do this?
When I tried to mobilize public opinion in Germany, I learned quite fast that it's very hard to denounce the Hitler past of Kiesinger. Especially he was elected quite democratically. So in order
what was his title at this
time? He was the German Chancellor, and during the war he was not only the member of the Nazi Party, but he was the deputy of Hitler's radio propaganda for foreign countries. And for me, belonging to the young German generation, this choice was a kind of reconciliation between the Germany of yesterday, that means the Nazi Germany, and the Germany of today. And in order to have this man resigning from his post, it's not enough to explain, and I lectured in German universities because I needed the mobilization of the German youth. And finally, together with my husband, we decided to do something more kind of, with a small scandal, denounce a huge one, the Jewish scandal. And we decided that perhaps the slap could be a mean in order to denounce the Hitler past of Kiesinger.
And right, I want to ask you just what kind of an affair this was that you went up and slapped the Chancellor of West Germany, but we want to take a time out right now. We're talking with Beate Klarsfeld, and we're talking about how she got involved with feeling the personal sense of finding Nazi criminals and exposing them to the world, people who have had a hideous past and are now masking as ordinary citizens. You were telling us how you were alarmed with the Chancellor of West Germany, and you felt that his Nazi past was being completely overlooked. So you decided to do what?
Well, the German tried to overlook, that's the problem. So together with my husband, we decided to denounce the scandal that a man like Kiesinger could become Chancellor of West Germany and also represent the young German youth in Germany. And in '68, during the Christian Democratic Party convention, the convention of his own party, I decided, was planned long time in advance, I decided to slap him. I even announced a slap in one of my meetings before German students 6 months before. So it was not planned in the moment, was very well prepared.
In other words, this would be like our Democratic or Republican conventions to elect the candidate for presidency?
No, it was not the convention of the election. It was just a meeting where this party fixed the program for the following year. And I succeeded in coming into the meeting hall, and by special circumstances it was possible for me to reach the stage, and I went behind this man, and when I slapped him I shouted, "Kiesinger Nazi, go out." So I was arrested. I was, the same evening I was sentenced to 1 year of jail without suspension.
Did you serve that year?
I didn't serve because the fact that I'm German and French citizen, I asked my lawyer the next day to see the French commander of Berlin, and because West Berlin is under the statute of the Four Allies, and I think they were very much embarrassed, the judge, and so they decided to release me until the appeal. And then I was sent to 2 months of jail with suspension, or 3 months, I don't remember. And when in '69, when Kiesinger was replaced by Willy Brandt, by the anti-fascist fighter, there was a prescription for this sentence.
Then what did you and your husband do after this first round of exposing ex-Nazis?
Oh, immediately after the campaign against Kiesinger, because I was now well known especially in Eastern European countries, like a German anti-Nazi fighter, I went to Poland and Czechoslovakia and protested here against anti-Semitism in Poland and Czechoslovakia. I was arrested in both countries and then expelled because it was very much embarrassing for them to put to jail the German anti-Nazi fighter.
I know that you were involved in seeking out the butcher of Lyon. Tell us a little bit about him and what you and your husband did.
This is the problem of these criminals who were active in France during the war and who remained completely unpunished. So in 1970...
Now, let me ask you something.
Yes.
After the war, and I think many of us are ignorant of this point, after the war ended, where did these ex-Nazis go? Were they still living in Germany? Were they fighting? How were they not known at, say, 1949, 1950?
Well, most of them remained in Germany. Most of them. Some escaped to South America, but only a few of them. Most of them simply stayed in Germany and continued their careers they started before the war or finished their studies. And when I learned that the former chief of the Nazi police of Lyon, Klaus Barbie, was living in South America, in Peru, I had the possibility to identify him because I received the identification. He was living there under a false name of Klaus Altmann. So the first time I traveled to South America, first to Peru, but he escaped when I arrived, and he went to Bolivia. I followed him to Bolivia with the clear evidence that Klaus Altmann is Klaus Barbie. And then I came back, and even the government was convinced by this fact. I came back a second time with an old Jewish lady. Her 3 children were deported by Klaus Barbie. He sent many Jewish children from the area of Lyon to Auschwitz, and her husband was executed by him. So we tried by forbidden demonstrations to mobilize public opinion, and then the French government asked for the extradition of Klaus Barbie, but the Bolivian fascist government ruled against the extradition request, and still today Klaus Barbie is living completely unpunished and freely in La Paz in Bolivia.
If he had been extradited, to Germany,
no, to France.
To France.
France asked because he committed the crimes in France.
I see. Is there a death penalty in France for
Generally there is, but it's not very often used, and I don't think that there would be even a sentence to death for Klaus Barbie.
What about in Germany, West Germany?
In Germany, after the war, the German abolished the sentence of death because they didn't want to after the Nuremberg trial, but the Nuremberg trial were led by the occupying powers, by the Allies. So that the German justice after the war decided to abolish the sentence to death because they didn't want to send to death their Nazi criminals.
That's. Some of us have seen the film "The Boys from Brazil." Have you seen that film?
I haven't seen, and I refuse to see this film because it's a fictions and it's a kind of myth to believe that Nazi criminals are living in South America, somewhere hidden in the jungle or surrounded by bodyguards. I have to explain again that most of them are living in Germany. We identified some of them, and especially those who were active in France and responsible for the deportation of the 80,000 Jews. The number one, Kurt Lischka, he retired last year. He was a businessman.
A businessman in Germany.
Herbert Hagen was the former chief of Eichmann in 1938 when he directed the anti-Jewish service of the secret service of the SS, and in France he directed the policy of the SS and of the Nazi police. He is today a commercial director of an important company. Heinrichsen, the most cruel, who's young today, he is 57 years old. He was especially in charge of the deportation of Jewish children and old Jews. He himself selected old Jews of 80 and 90 from the Jewish hospital to bring them to the deportation cars. He is today a lawyer in the south of Germany. He's a Burgmeister of the very small and attractive, nice Bavarian city. And all those who were active in France became judges, lawyers, you know, this is a fact.
They became judges and lawyers in Germany.
Yes, and they are still today. But we succeeded with our activities to oblige first in 71 the German. In 71, Germany and France signed a new treaty in order to bring these criminals who were sentenced in France after the war to death or life imprisonment in absentia now to trial in Germany. And in 71, when both governments signed this agreement, the German Parliament, the Bundestag, refused the ratification. And so we generated incidents in Germany.
In other words, France asked Germany to approve the Franco-German accord. This is what you're speaking of?
And to find a solution in order to sentence now these criminals in Germany.
The ones that France felt had perpetrated horrors in France.
Yes. And so we succeeded in 1975 with illegal actions in Germany to put the pressure on the German Parliament, and they ratified. It took us 4 years more in order to bring now the German justice to indict the three most important. And we tried here also by documentation to show for the implication of these men in the deportation of the Jews from France. We published, for instance, a collection of 136 documents signed by these criminals, because it's very important. This will be the trial of men who belong to the hierarchy of the Nazi police in France, who gave the orders, and the charge against them will be documents they signed themselves 30 years before. This, for instance, is a list of the names of the 80,000 names who died in France, either by deportation to Auschwitz or in the camps in France or by summary executions. You see here the...
Now these people were not only Jews, were they?
They were the only Jews, no. These criminals who we are bringing to trial were especially involved in the final solution of the Jews. And anyway, today, a trial in Germany can only be successful concerning criminals who acted out of vile motives or against Nazi ideology. That means criminals who committed crimes against the Jews.
You mean if the crimes were committed against people who were not Jews?
Generally today, if you have a trial in Germany concerning war criminals, it means German criminals who killed in France, resistance fighters or maquisards. The German law has prescribed these criminals already, these crimes.
I see. I suppose it's a misconception that I had, and I suppose many other Americans. There was no big plan to seek out the Nazis after World War II and bring them to justice in Germany. You mean most of them escaped without any kind of punishment, any kind of notice?
Oh yes, and we demonstrated very often, and we spoke to the neighbors of these criminals. And I can tell you that nobody is embarrassed to live together with a Nazi criminal, even close to them. And for the Germans, I think that's very important to explain. For the German population today, these men are not considered like criminals because they didn't committed a crime after the war. They committed the crimes during the war. They committed their crimes under the order of Hitler, and so they are not considered like criminals.
All right. We're talking with Beate Klarsfeld, who has made it her personal goal in life to seek justice, to see that justice is done to the people who perpetrated the Holocaust, the Nazi criminals from World War II. We'll be back in a moment to talk about the rise of neo-Nazism in Germany today. Beate, what is happening in West Germany today as far as the rise? We hear of the rise of neo-Nazism. Is it very serious? What is happening?
The neo-Nazis were defeated in 1969 when Kurt Lischka was defeated, and they couldn't receive the 5% of votes necessary for a party in Germany to come into the German parliament. So that since this time the neo-Nazis are voting for conservative parties like the Christian Democratic Party. But I'm not so much afraid about the importance of their members. They are quite good organized. They have a lot of newspapers, neo-Nazi newspapers. The most important is the Deutsche Nationalzeitung, and every week spread out over 6 columns. They are announcing the lie of the 6 million. In this way Israel put pressure on Germany in order to receive war reparations. And here also we tried to start a campaign. We went into their meetings, and it happened in 1976 in December when we learned that they prepared the most important meeting of the year in Munich. We tried first to prevent this meeting with local people from Munich, and then we set up as a group of 10 from Paris to Munich, and then we were confronted with about 1,000 former Nazis and neo-Nazis, and the only way to act and to provoke a shock in the German conscience, my husband went into the meeting hall brandishing a yellow star and asking the right for a Jew to speak.
Now, why was he wearing a yellow star?
In order to explain that he's a Jew. He said, "My name is Klarsfeld, I would like to explain the suffering of the 6 million. So the whole crowd jumped off him. He was pushed out and full of blood. But the next day, the German newspapers were obliged to condemn very vigorously the action of the neo-Nazis, because since the first time since 1945, a Jew was beaten up publicly in Germany by the neo-Nazis. And since we stopped the little ones their meetings, they are obliged to go to the outskirts, because either the meeting halls are not available for them in the center of the German cities, or the young youth in Germany is occupying the meeting hall the day before."
Do they have many youths in their movement? Are these the old and dying out Nazis of World War II?
I would say that 2/3 are certainly older, and 1/3 are the young neo-Nazis. And these young neo-Nazis are well organized, they are armed, and they also have quite a lot of money in order to prepare attacks, and I think they are quite dangerous.
When you speak of the older Nazis, are they proud of what they did in World War II, or is this new neo-Nazi movement trying to deny that 6 million people were killed?
Oh, they're very proud, and we just published a book, The Holocaust and the Neo-Nazi Mythomania, because we tried to give the answer to the 3 themes of neo-Nazis. The 3 themes are that Hitler wasn't aware about the final solution. They tried to make Hitler again attractive. The second theme of the neo-Nazis is to deny the existence of the gas chambers, and the third one to say that the number of 6 million is exaggerated, to deny the number of the 6 million. So,
do they still brag about the Aryan race and that is the way the world should go, along the breeding of the Aryan race? Or what do the neo-Nazis, what do they rally around? How do they try and attract people?
Oh, I think they attract people of good faith, I can say, in making Nazism attractive, because if you present Hitler, because young people today on the research of an ideal can be attracted by men like Hitler, who really, he stopped unemployment in Germany, he built beautiful highways, and he was a very good speaker, he attracted the German mass. So if you let out all the sad things, the gas chambers, the killing of the Jews, of the gypsies, of the Russian prisoners, you know, he really became a leader for young people. And this is dangerous, and for this reason we try to give the answer with 3 studies in our books, proving that Hitler was aware first about the final solution he himself orchestrated, and also showing the existence of the gas chambers.
Do they teach about World War II in the West German and East German schools?
Or they teach about, but anyway in the school books there are material about the Holocaust, but the fact is that, for instance, first the school teachers prefer not to speak about, and then the young people in Germany today are not so much, they don't like to speak too much and to hear too much about.
All right. We'll be right back with Beate Klarsfeld. Okay. Beate, one quick last question. When we do business, we in America, with people in West Germany, the Mercedes-Benz, I'm thinking of kitchen cabinets, some of the finest lines, Peugenpaar and a Milmo. Are we dealing with ex-Nazis, or?
No, I don't think that you have to exaggerate, because I think there's a German news today. The German news is a hope, and in fact, you have to make sure that you don't deal with former Nazis. But generally, I think in any way you have to start new contacts with Germany. The only thing I think the United States can do is to ask, together with the Democrats in the world, to judge these criminals, because, you know, if these criminals are not judged, I think this lets the door open for any new outbreak of Hitlerism or Nazism, and to any new outbreak of fascism.
What did your parents tell you about World War II?
Or when I came to Paris in 1960, I knew practically nothing about Nazi crimes, because my parents never wanted to open my eyes about this.
And so they just obliterated the whole thing?
Oh yes.
Until you met and married your husband?
Until I came to France, where I learned something about the period between 1933 and 1945.
Okay. Thank you very much, Beate Klarsfeld, who is a world-renowned Nazi hunter and a person who cares about justice. Please be with me next week when we'll have another interesting show on Talk It Over.
You've been watching Talk It Over with your host, Ellen Adelstein. Join us every week at this same time for Talk It Over here on Channel 11. The preceding program was pre-recorded.